Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to wait just a couple of more minutes to make sure everyone is in the meeting and we are online. Thank you all for joining us. Just a couple of more minutes and we're starting. Thank you. We're letting everyone from the waiting room to join. There's a few more people. This is also going to be Facebook Live. So this is all happening right now. Great. Okay. Shalom lekulam. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today for another day that is really, really not easy. Not easy for me as Israeli, for everyone in the community. We look at Israel and we see it with a heavy heart. And I've been saying it for a couple of days that I feel like my heart is exploding, right? It's not easy to see it and to hear those voices. So thank you for joining us, whether you're on Zoom, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on your way to work, preparing for Shabbat, whatever it is that you're doing. Thank you for making the time to join us for this, I think, very important session to talk about what's going on in Israel and to talk about the conflict. Now, just to emphasize, this program is about hearing the Israelis who are in Israel right now and hear their voices. Now, I know there are a lot of news going on and a lot of different views of how things, who started and how things happened. I'm going to let you guys decide what newspaper you're going to read. This program is about hearing the Israelis who are in Israel right now and can share their story with us today. So we're going to do this today. We're going to hear a live story coming from Jerusalem, the villages around Gaza. We're going to hear from Lod, and we're going to hear from Tel Aviv. I'm just gonna start by sharing that, you know, ever since Yom Yerushalayim, the day when everything started, and Hamas launched missiles to Israel, to Jerusalem, where my family is based, I got a message from my sister saying, Nadav, there's a zakah, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden, I see everyone is in shelter. Ever since that moment until today, I'm literally keeping and watching what's going on in Israel. My own family is in Hulon, with his family in Hulon. My brother and his kids are in staircase. That's the only safe space they have to make sure they're safe, spending nights there. So it is it's very hard for everyone to hear those stories, to experience what's going on. And today we're gonna hear the voices and see the people. I'm going to start with Jerusalem, and just like a quick maybe framing to what happened in Jerusalem. We're going to hear from Oshra in just a second, but in Jerusalem, when everything started, we're talking about when Hamas, the day of Yom Yerushalayim, launched missiles, and the events of Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, had to stop. Alerts were sound, a zakah siren went on, and that when everything exploded. Now, before we're going to hear Oshra, I just want to kind of say how things going to work. I want to hear also you and whoever is on the Zoom, but we're going to ask you to send all your questions to the chat at the moment, and then in the end, we're going to try to address them and answer any question that you have. So with your permission, I just want to show you a quick video of what happened in Jerusalem mamash a few days ago. Hopefully you can see this. If it's not going to work, then okay. Yeah, so this is what we're going to stop sharing that. During the Tza'adah, during the Day of Jerusalem, there were a siren went on and Hamas launched a missile on Jerusalem. Here today with us, we have Oshra, a former shaliach of Westchester and a dear friend. Oshra works in the area where everything started, Sheikh Jarrah, and can share with us a little bit about her experience of what's going on in Jerusalem right now. As Oshra, shalom, and thank you for being with us today.
Hi, everyone. My friends from Westchester and Nadav, thank you for having me today. Not in a good day, not in a good week, but I feel very important. And it's a privilege for me to share with you my feelings during this week. So as many of you know, before coming to Westchester and also today, I work in the Ministry of Justice as a senior deputy to the State Attorney's Office in the State Attorney's Office. And almost every day for almost 14 years, besides the 2 years in Westchester, I drive on the same path from Katamon neighborhood in Jerusalem, in the west part of Jerusalem, to my office at the Ministry of Justice, which located in East Jerusalem in Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. By the way, next to the district court in Jerusalem and also next to the old American consulate and many other consulates, close by many ministers like the Ministry of Science, the Ministry of Public Security. This is not a very inside neighborhood or inside part of Jerusalem. And in the past few weeks during the Ramadan month, this way was different for me. I felt insecure taking this path that leads to my office where I spend most of my days. I felt tension on the street more than ever. And it is not the first time, and you probably know that there is tension in Jerusalem and that there is tension, especially in the eastern part of Jerusalem. It's not something new, but this time I felt something different. Looking and seeing the young man on the street, throwing stones, yelling at people that walking on the street, like the tension was built since the end of April. I never walked in this month on the street. I just drove in the car, went inside directly to my office, to the parking lot in the Ministry of Justice. But yet I felt very insecure and also I felt fear. One evening, in the beginning of May, I asked the guards in the Ministry of Justice, is that safe to go outside like in the evening? What do you feel? What are your feelings? And they told me, Oshra, we know you for many years. And we know that sometimes you go outside at night and work a lot of hours. Don't go in the evening, don't go outside at night. It's not safe. Even we feel insecure. And it was like, for me, a sign when the guards in the Ministry of Justice, that they were soldiers and they were trained, that they said, we can never know, something can happen every minute. I felt very insecure. And I felt that the tension can lead to a boiling point that I don't know how can we continue from that. And also I felt that I need like the leadership to help, the leadership from both sides, but especially I didn't hear the voice of the leadership, the Arab leadership, the Israeli Arab leadership, that I wanted to hear their voices. So the background is not very important right now. As Nadav presented, we're going to discuss our feelings and not the events in the background related to Sheikh Jarrah conflict. We know that there is a conflict, a legal conflict, a conflict that also related to the sovereignty in Jerusalem, and it's not the issue right now. But yet I felt that the conflict this time creates feelings and emotion much more than ever. So I was witnesses in my own eyes to lots of violence protests, to disorderly conducts, stones, rocks, and Molotov cocktails that I heard from the guards going outside that were thrown towards policemen, towards the guards, towards civilians that were on the streets. And it was very sad and also very frustrating. And I was very concerned. Last week, before the week of Yom Yerushalayim this week, I went outside in the evening, went outside from the office in the evening in an hour that it was okay, because we got ordered from the Ministry of Justice, do not go after 7 p.m. outside of the office, leave the office before 7 p.m. I went outside, I was with my hair cover, and when I went outside from my office, the street was packed, crowded with a lot of people, a lot of men, young men, and also families. The traffic was very heavy. We just stood on the street. And the minute I went outside to the street, outside of the parking lot of the Ministry of Justice, I just took off my hair cover. And it never happened for me before. Since I got married, as you can see, I'm covering my hair. I just felt that it's dangerous for me, that someone will see me with a scarf on my head, which means that I'm Jew and also religious Jew. Zion is religious Jew. And I felt that I just cannot sit in the car, on the street, in the traffic with this sign on my head. And it was like, it's such an absurd living in Jerusalem, in my own country, in Israel, just 1 minute from the west part of Jerusalem, going outside from an official ministry office, taking off like a sign, a symbol of a Jew lady. But I felt like I have to, like I can't, I want them to think that I'm Arab, maybe like, you know, the plate on the car doesn't matter, it's all yellow in Israel, and it's like Arab Israelis, they also, Israeli Arab also have cars with a yellow plate. So it was like, for me, I felt so hard with that. Came back home, I told my husband, like, he would never believe like how in danger I felt. And I was online with my friend on the phone until I went out, to the main road where I felt much secure, much better. On Yom Yerushalayim, as Nadav said, things got like this week, we got an order this week since Sunday. We didn't come to the office, like all the attorneys and the worker got an order, do not come to the office in the Ministry of Justice. It's too dangerous. Stay to work at home the whole week, which is, it's a sign. And also I felt very frustrated and very hard feelings around that. And on Yom Yerushalayim, as Nadav said before, things got worse. Like it was an escalation that led to this operation and to this conflict. Before that, we have decided as a family not to go with our young kids to the celebration, to the rally, like the tzaadah, the rally that every year there is a rally with flags and songs, and it's a joyful event. We have decided not to participate because we felt it's too dangerous. We were afraid from this boiling point, and I have like my information from my work in the Ministry of Justice. I felt it's not right. Another thing that that gave me a hard feeling that day was that the Israeli flag was removed from the district court. The district court in Jerusalem is just across the street, like from my office, from the Ministry of Justice. So like a group of mob Israeli Arabs went inside the court, not before, like the policemen took out all the judges and the workers from the court few hours before because of the danger. And they took off the flag and put on a Palestine flag And it was very hard to see that. And the feeling was and still of a chaos and loss of control. I felt very, very worried as a citizen, as a parent, and also as part of the legal system and the law enforcement in Israel system, system. I felt, and I still feel, hard feelings. So on Yom Yerushalayim at 6 p.m., when we did not go to participate in the celebration, we heard the siren. I must tell, I was shocked. Like, I didn't understand, like, it was a siren, maybe it's a motorcycle. I heard that, like, I didn't get it. Like, I didn't think that this is what's going to happen in Jerusalem. Riots, okay, mobs and violence protests, it's reasonable. But for me, like, in my mind, it's irreasonable to have a siren. I was alone with my three young kids. We are lucky. So absurd to say that, but we are lucky to have a shelter at home in our own house. So we got in. My neighbor with a baby that doesn't have a shelter came inside. She was confused and scared, carrying the baby on her lap, saying, like, I must go inside. She went outside with us. We were standing in the shelter. I didn't even close the window, like the part, like, of the iron part of the window, because usually we don't close it. And we stood there for 10 minutes. And my son, my oldest one, some of you know him. He's a very smart boy, and he started to ask questions. He's almost 8 and had a lot of questions. And those kind of questions, as a parent, I didn't want to answer him all these questions. It's too complicated to explain everything. And you don't want your kids to be so in fear and to be so scared. And this was, like, for me as a parent, a big conflict. How am I going to explain everything and to make it simple and not so scary? And I was also myself, I was shocked. And it was unbelievable situation from us.
Right.
So this is what we went through. And we are lucky in Yerushalayim. It's all started in Jerusalem, but relatively it's quiet in Jerusalem now. We are going to hear from other people that they are going through much difficult days than us. But I just want to say 2 more sentences. We would not, like, I felt myself, like, who would imagine that the Hamas will bomb Jerusalem? So many Arabs and Palestinians, people living here in this area. So sometimes in Jerusalem, we feel during those kind of operations and when the Hamas throw missiles to Israel, we feel safe because we live in such a mixed and holy city for the Muslims also. So we wouldn't think that the Hamas is going to launch and to throw missiles to Jerusalem. So it was, for me, shocking. And having said all that, I must say that we have a very strong and united people. Am Israel is very strong. People just started with lots of beautiful social initiative to help our brother in the south of Israel and also in Lod, in the center of Israel, sending goodies, cakes, food. It's beautiful to see that. Schools did that, communities here. So this is like a good thing to see that.
Right.
Always, like, stand together and we know how to be united. And another point that this is what really, I'm busy with that thoughts a lot. And this is, I'm concerned about that, is the coexistence. Because we used to, and we live together with Arabs, we work with Arabs, we see the Israeli Arabs that we work with them, we live with them, we live next to them in the Ministry of Justice, in the hospitals, everywhere. And I'm worried about what's going to be tomorrow after this operation is going to end. Like, this delicate relationship that we we created and we built during the past the years has cracked. And maybe our representative from Lod can speak about that more, but I'm very worried about that, this point personally.
Toda for this. I can't even say, like, such a real, I feel like you brought us to where everything started, and you gave us the sense of, the street, the smell, and toda for that. And please, תהיו בריאים ותשמרו על עצמכם, and thank you for that. You're welcome to stay with us. As Ashra mentioned, after the missiles started in Jerusalem, immediately after, there were hundreds of missiles launched to Otef Aza. We call it Otef Aza, which is the towns that are located very close to Gaza, and also the cities that are very close to Gaza. We're talking about all those little towns and villages around Gaza, and we're talking about cities like Ashkelon and Ashdod even. Can't believe that Ashdod is so close, but this is how it became. And their life became a living hell. I mean, a living hell. Couldn't leave the bomb shelters. With us today, we have Elinor that live in a place called Gaza Village, which is a very small town next to Gaza. And she had to leave last night where she lives because it became too dangerous for her. Elinor, thank you for being us. Thank you for being here with us today. I hope you can see us.
I see you. Can you see me?
Okay, great. Yeah, we're gonna. Can you please share with us a little bit about what's going on from your point of view?
So first of all, thanks for having me. And also, it was fascinating just hearing what's going on, because actually when all started, I was next to you guys. I decided to take a break vacation from COVID in Israel and go visit New York when it starts opened. And I flew to take some air and kind of like do some restart for my soul. And then everything has happened. And I'm telling you, I'm living in Kfar Aza, which is a small kibbutz in Gaza envelope, for almost 13 years now, raising my kids there. And I've never been terrified more than being outside of Israel than being with them. So we're living in the kibbutz for, again, 13 years. Me, my husband, of course, our 3 kids. One was born after the operation in 2018, which I think it was Operation Cast Lead. And so we raised our kids and we grew up as a family together. And we call this area 95.5. 95% of the time is the most beautiful place on earth, raising in a small town, in a small village, surrounded by grass. Kids are opening the doors, taking their bikes and riding to their kids. They're living 2 minutes from each other, or at the most 5 minutes. They need to take the bike and just go to the grocery store, or going to the post office, local post office, or even going to the doctor. It's a small village. I can call the clinic saying, he's not feeling well. Can you see if everything is okay, or just he needs some attention? Or it's a small community where everybody knows each other. The kindergarten teacher is the mom's best friend, and small community. And actually, living there is, again, 95% of this beautiful time, and then 5% of the time is hell. And I'm sorry I'm using these words, but then living under attack is just one of the most, I guess, impossible things I'm doing for myself, for my kids. And I think both sides are being very emotional, under emotional attack, and also, of course, physical attack. I always say, and I told Nadav this, I believe that both moms from both sides of the border wants the same thing. We both want our kids to raise in a nice neighborhood, in a nice town, in a nice community, and we both moms want just to raise their kids and to be happy. But then we're feeling from the Israeli side that the moms are not the one who runs the world, of course, and we're feeling as someone in the other side, I want to say, is not thinking about the kids and isn't think about the families. Um, there's a lot of people that are trying to be in touch with the people in Gaza, and when they're able to, they're hearing most of the same things as I'm seeing it now. So most of the people believe that they can live together, kind of like what Oshra explained and told us about regular mixed Arab Jews cities in Israel. They used to live together, and a lot of the people believes that they can do it.
Mhm.
And Nadav just said that we yesterday we left the house. Actually, this morning, Israel time, we left the house because last night was horrible. Israeli Air Force bombed Gaza, and of course the Hamas missiles. Storage places, and he tried to give us, the citizens, some time off and some a normal place to live. And it was a very hard night. Missiles were launches every second to our small village and to the big cities, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Rishon LeZion. Those are big cities. That is not just like a small town. And a lot of people, even in Israel, thinks that launching missiles to the Gaza envelope is okay, thing that happens every once in a while, but it happens more than what people are even aware here, even here in Israel. We are used to it. The alarm, the regular siren is different than the siren here in Gaza envelope. We have only 15 seconds to get to the shelter. And I tell you, 15 seconds, even in your house, in the normal Israeli small houses, is not that easy to go from one place to the other. So in those days, we are playing both rooms. So like one leg is in the shelter room and one leg is in the kitchen, or there's a siren while I was cooking yesterday, cooking dinner, just regular family dinner. And I had the seconds to decide what I'm doing first. So like closing the gas or taking the dog with me. We have a dog, and of course she's part of the family. And I had only like a second to yell Geva or Itach or one of my kids' name just to make sure that they heard it. And of course we all hearing it. Then I guess it's just a survival thing to yell at the kids to come. When they were younger, so they're, I don't say they're all, but my youngest is 12 years old. So they are almost 17, 15, and 12 years old. They grew up in this environment and in this 95.5 atmosphere of this beautiful community that we have. And they are I want to say we're all sitting or falling asleep at night with intense, because we are always on alarm. We're always almost ready to go to the shelter room, and we're always just about to go. And when the red collar siren here in Gaza envelope started, it has a sound of when you move a plastic chair. So it's like, so whenever we are walking or going to friend's house, even in the kibbutz or outside or Tel Aviv. I was born and raised in Tel Aviv, so my family still lives in Tel Aviv. When this sounds is just somebody moves the chairs, automatically we're all like raising up and listening. Is there an alarm or is this something else? Is this, do we need to go somewhere? This morning we arrived here to Emek Hefer, which is probably like about an hour north from Tel Aviv. The first thing my youngest kid asked is, where is the shelter? Now they had in this um, 6 days operation days. They had only one siren. 95 of the people here probably didn't go to the shelter room because they did not believe it's here or it was not opened. They all looked at him when he asked the question, where the shelter, they all looked at him as, what do you mean shelter? Who needs it? But for our safe and for our needs, that was the first need to know before, where's the toilet? Where's the, how do you turn the hot water on, or where can we put our stuff that we brought here for the refrigerator? It was the first question is, where is the shelter? I believe that I want to believe, and I have to believe, and this is my what I'm actually talking with my kids is things will be okay one day. I'm sure we can live together. I'm sure we can raise our kids in a quiet environment. At the past year, when COVID was on in Israel, we had 9 missiles. This has never happened before. Years only after Operation Protective Edge. So between 2014 and I think it was 2018, we had 0 missiles going on. But in these years, we also had 0 missiles. We all believed that something good can happen. So when it started 5 days ago, we all were shocked. We were not ready. Usually we can smell the tension building up. It was from 0 to 100. So immediately we needed to change our lives and switch houses, I guess. Not in the good version of switching houses.
Right. And no, I mean, thank you for making the time. I'm sure you're, busy a second before Shabbat start, and you had to, the fact that you had to leave, I want to say almost, flee. You had to pack up quickly, make sure there's a little bit of a sheket, silence coming, and then quickly leave in the middle of the night. It's just unreal. And to think that, you're probably thinking about, oh my God, my stuff is there. Everything is there. My family's here. I can't even imagine the days that your family is going through. And Bemet, Todah for giving us, I don't even want to say a glimpse. It's not even a glimpse of the intense and hard reality that you go through. But I want to say not only today and not only this week. I think it's the fact that you choose to live there. It's almost never ending. So I wish that your family will know days of peace, and that your kids will not go into a house before thinking where the bathroom is, to think where the bomb shelter is. Todah.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to talk about one of the things that happened in Israel I think in this current conflict, is what's going on in mixed cities. So while the missiles were launched to Israel, at that point, riots started in mixed cities. Arab Israelis started violent riots towards Jewish symbols. And we saw it happening in cities like Akko, Haifa, and of course Lod, also Jaffa. And of course, Lod, I think what happened in Lod was very, very extreme. We all heard that synagogues were set on fire. Citizens, Israeli citizens, Jews among them, were scared to leave their home. They were evacuated by the police because they were scared of what's going on in the street. It got to a point that Lod, again, a city that is in the center of Israel. We're not talking about periphery right now. We're talking about the city that is a second from the airport, right? That city was declared to be a military zone. There were a border police brigade brought into that city to make sure the citizens are more or less safe, from a symbol of coexistence of Arabs, Israeli, and Jews, Israeli, who lived together for many, many years. It became a battlefield. And it is still the situation. With us today, we have Daniel Whittler. Daniel is Oleh Hadash from New York, and he lives in Lod right now. And Daniel will share his point of view, what's going on right now in Lod. Daniel, toda. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Nadav. I grew up in New York. I made Aliyah 27 years ago, and I've been living in Lod for the past 15 years. It's an amazing place to live. Not for everybody, but it really is an amazing place to live. A short story just to understand what we're living with. Up until 4 nights ago, when my now 13-year-old son was about 5 years old, I took him and his 2-year-old sister to the playground. And there was an Arab mother there with 3 young daughters, Arabic speaking. And my son felt bad. He wanted to include them in whatever they were playing, and he tried to engage them, but they didn't understand him. My son then switched to his broken English because maybe they'll understand English. Didn't really help, but that, I think, it describes what's going on here. You have two communities that live side by side. We interact in the supermarket when we go to the doctor's office or the post office, but it's more or less two separate communities. We live in the same neighborhoods. One door down, there's an Arab family, and the other way, 3 doors down, there are a number of Arab families in my neighborhood. In one of the neighborhoods, about 2 kilometers from here, about a mile and a half, on the same night that what Oshrat was telling us about, where they took down the flag by the Ministry of Justice. So the same thing happened here near the central bus station in the city. There was a mob that came out and pulled down the flag. It was not a pretty sight. A little bit away from there, no line of sight, but not too far, some Jews came out and said, we need to restore our pride. And they came out with Israeli flags, and they stood on the street corner. It was in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood, but it was bordering on this neighborhood, this Ramat Eshkol. And eventually a mob came around, circled around the other side, and started throwing stones and Molotov cocktails. They called the police over and over again for an hour, and the mob is coming closer and closer. And some of the people that were there that were legally carrying weapons, they started by shooting in the air, and things progressed, and one of the rioters was killed. And then the rioting really started happening. The next night, after the funeral, the rioting got worse, and meanwhile, the police are nowhere to be found. So in this neighborhood, which is predominantly where everything started, which is predominantly Arab, there are quite a few Jews from lower socioeconomic status, and in the past 10 years, about 70 families from middle-class families came in to strengthen the community that was there. They were under attack. The synagogue, all their cars were burned, every single one of them. The electric boxes in their houses were burned, so they were sitting there in the dark. The local Jewish school in their neighborhood was burned. The pre-army mechina, the Beit Midrash, was burnt. And it just gets worse and worse, and they can't leave their home. And then there's the sirens going off, and they have to go out because they don't have. These are old buildings. They don't have shelters, so they have to go outside. Not outside, to the stairwell, in buildings that are mixed, and they're not quite sure who burnt their electric box. Was it somebody from outside the building who came in? Most probably, but maybe it was somebody from the building. They're not quite sure. And this is what they're living with. Now, thankfully, I live about 2 kilometers from there, and the rioting hasn't really spilled out to here yet. Here and there are small instances, and my community started putting out civilian patrols because not to confront, but to report that if we see something going on before anything develops, we want to report it to the police. In the meantime, um, hooligans, for lack of a better word, it's a gang. It's sort of like I guess in America you it would be sort of like a motorcycle gang showed up in town and they started wrecking havoc. They're a known gang here in Israel, and they're known to be quite racist. And they started, stopping cars and trying to figure out who's the drivers, and it wasn't pretty. And my friends on these patrols um, are still trying to chase them out. They're reporting to the police, and the police aren't dealing with them either. And we're trying to chase them out of the community. Last night I was on patrol, so we started the patrol by getting a report that the local Arab grocery is being burned. So we show up. Well, I didn't show up. It was a friend of mine who showed up first, and they somehow managed to get this motorcycle gang away and put out the fire. Meanwhile, on the national news reports, it was already reported that it was burnt down. We had to get in touch with the reporter so that to correct the report and to send photographs. The store was open this morning. On the other hand, later on the night, I had to show up at a place where one of the neighbors, in this case an Arab, came out 3 times during the night and fired into the air. I'm not quite sure. He may have felt threatened. He may not have felt threatened. It's unclear as to what exactly happened there. And we're sitting there and we're calling the police. And there are shell casings on the floor, and we're there for an hour, and we're calling, and all of a sudden 4 ambulances show up, and they said, "Okay, what happened? Where's the incident?" And we said, "No, there's nobody injured, thank God." But it took the police well over an hour to show up, see what happened, and get the testimony and the video footage from the neighbors there. It's scary. I'm not going to let my kids out at night. I don't go out at night unless, again, I really, really have to, or for this patrol. And again, the patrol I go, I will not do it alone. Obviously, we're doing it in groups. We make sure that we have somebody who's armed with us, and we make sure that we stay away from anybody. We're just there to look, to see what's happening, and to report to the police, and pray that they show up. Thankfully, Nadav mentioned that it was declared a war zone. Not quite a war zone. It was declared that there's a municipal emergency. The border police were brought in, but they took them a very long time to start acting. So until late in the middle of the night last night, the community was on its own. Again, my community is more or less where we're trying to keep the quiet. But in Ramat Eshkol, if families are locked in their apartments, they can't leave. It's just incredible. Hopefully, now that they started working, it's getting better. On the brighter side of thing, and this is what others before me have spoke about, the coexistence in our neighborhood. Again, my neighborhood is more middle class, and the Arabs that live here are also more middle class. And there's those that live usually adjacent to these Arab families have, they know them and they have conversation with them. So they started meeting. There's even talk about doing joint patrols because we're both being threatened by, again, outsiders that are coming in, and it is a common threat to a large extent, and we're hoping that each side could act as a calming influence on the fundamentalists and the radicals on their side. And we're just hoping that things, again, last night there were the beginnings of hope started developing, and we're just hoping and praying that that continues, and that God willing, in the next few days will get better, and that somehow it's going to take a long time to rebuild the trust that was lost in the past 4 nights. But it has to happen. There's no choice.
Right, Daniel. I can't imagine what you and your family are going through right now, and to be locked just a block, 2 blocks from you, there's a war in the street, and we're not talking about the north. It is the middle of Israel. It is what, like 30, 20 minutes from Tel Aviv. This is what's going on. This is the situation, which is completely terrible. A city that was a symbol of coexistence, and we're talking about a year after a year of COVID, when it looked like, coexistence can happen, and we had so many beautiful symbols of that. 4 days, everything destroyed, and the trust need to be builded. But more than everything, Daniel, just on behalf of everyone in this call, please watch over yourself, shia briut, like make sure that everyone is okay and safe at home. We really, really, really thank you for sharing your side of the story with us today. You're welcome to stay for as much as you can. I know it's Shabbat and you have to get ready. Aval toda, and be strong. Really, like everything that is happening in Israel, in Lod. Now we have a face, and we know that there's people behind that story. As toda.
Thank you. And I hopefully, if you want, I'd love to have the opportunity to tell you the beautiful story of the city of Lod when things calm down.
Toda rabba. I want to move on to one of the characteristics of this conflict, that it is, as I said before, not limited to a geography. This conflict is everywhere in Israel. We're talking about the south, we're talking about the center of Israel, we're talking about a little bit of in the north, but also even places like Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was bombarded and was bombed by missiles. With us today, Linoy. Linoy is one of our virtual Shinshinim, and Linoy is here to tell us about what happened to her parents. They live in Tel Aviv, and a missile fell very close to where they are. Linoy, are you with us today?
Hi.
I can see you. I'm going to put you in the front. Right. Linoy, how are you? How's your family?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm okay, and my family is okay as well. I will tell you now a bit of what they've been through this past week with the sirens here in Tel Aviv, and a little bit about myself first. I'm a student now in Hebrew University in Jerusalem, so I'm not in the current situation. I'm not living in Tel Aviv. I live in East Jerusalem in Mount Scopus, next to the campus. So I've been experienced both their story and my own story in Jerusalem. What Oshra told you about the sirens on Monday, we had a siren in Jerusalem as well. But I want to focus on the story of my parents because we had something really, really big going on here. So my parents and I was born and raised in Tel Aviv, in the north side of Tel Aviv, in a neighborhood called Ramat Aviv. It's a very established and well-known neighborhood, very different from the center and south of the city by her characters. All the community here it feels a bit disconnected from all the other stuff that were happening in Israel and in the city of Tel Aviv in general. And the community itself is very connected to itself, and the things that happens here really goes out to the other sides of Israel. Like the neighborhood itself, Ramat Aviv, is known by known by herself in her name. So on Tuesday night, I was in Jerusalem when my roommate told me there was missiles launching to Tel Aviv. And I immediately called my parents that were just walking through the door when the sirens started on. And my room is the shelter, mamad. So they went inside my room and they closed the door, but they forgot to close the window because, same as Oshra says, it's when you never close the window, you never think it's that close to you. And the sensation of having a siren right now where you are, it just feels really far away from you. So I think like in the back of their mind, they didn't really thought it's so close and something this big can happen in their neighborhood. And they sound a very big noise, a very big explosion outside of my room. And my mom thought that it felt like the rocket, the missile felt here. And my dad was, he said it can't be, like there is no way it fell here, but the voice was really loud and all the furnitures were shaken. They waited in the room for an hour. There was a siren after a siren after a siren. They were really shocked and surprised. They called me and they asked me if I have the same thing in Jerusalem, and I said I don't. After an hour, more or less, they start getting the videos of a missile that fell a building next to us, inside a parking lot, an underground parking lot, and he hit a wall and did like a huge hole in the wall. No one got harmed, but the building itself had a hole in it, and all the windows and the apartment in that building were shattered. The windows shattered, and all the furniture is moving. And one family even evacuated from the building and moved on to another apartment in Tel Aviv because of the what's happening there. I think it was quite a shock for the neighborhood itself and for the people in the community here as well. We never thought it will get here. We saw the videos. My dad, the day after it, went himself to the building. I know the street. I lived here all my life. I know this place. And I was shocked to see in the videos my own neighborhood and people that I know say a rocket fell, a missile fell in Ramat Aviv. I can't even, it's hard for me to describe the sensation of safe that shattered in a second because of this event. I thought that the area that I live currently in my life, East Jerusalem, is not so safe zone to live in. Like I know that, and I knew that before I moved to there. But I always looked at my neighborhood as the safest place that can be. Not only because of my experience as a child, in addition, the experience of being here and never in the most exaggerating situations, something like that never happened here in Tel Aviv, in this specific neighborhood. And when it happened, I think something really broke that day. That night was really awful for the community. A lot of police were here. All the street that I live in was closed in both sides, and they even put protection in the parking lot. I'm sorry. They put protection in the parking lot so people won't go and take pictures and videos of it and share with their friends, because they now look it up and see what's happened there. And this is my parents and I story. In very miracle way, nothing happened to my building and to my parents as well. And I remind you, they left the window open. They haven't closed the iron wall of the mamad. And it was a miracle that nothing happened to the house and to them. And this is the sensations that's going on through this week and through the community right now are very hard to adjust. And yeah, I think this is what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. And I think what we're sensing from what you're saying is that, there is no like a place that is safe per se. Like if you are in Tel Aviv, you'll be safer than Jerusalem. You'll be safer than Otef Aza. You'll be safer than the north. This current situation, the feeling that we're all getting that everywhere is not safe. And what you're expressing to us right now is that, this is your personal, space, personal security. The idea is that, Ramat Aviv is very, very close to, in terms of if we say that Central Tel Aviv is Manhattan, Ramat Aviv, Herzliya is like Westchester. This is how close it was. I mean, just to understand that, you think that this is a safe place, but there is none. And again, it'll take a while for us to gain that sense of security back to where it was before this. I do wanna say that, and I wanna say toda, first of all, to all of our presenters today, to Oshra from Jerusalem, who helped me building this event. Toda lach Oshra for being a friend, alumni shlicha, but everything. Elinor from Otef Aza, again, I wish that everyone, you'll come back, that your house will be intact and your family will be safe. Daniel from Lod and Linoy, toda rabba for sharing your story with us and making us feel a little bit more, giving us a little bit of sense of what's really going on in Israel. Behind those headlines, behind those TV broadcasts, you are the voice, you are the faces, you are the reality of what's going on right now in Israel. אז אני רוצה to wish all of us Shabbat Shalom. It's going to be a Chag. מקווה שזה יהיה. I want to hope that it's going to be Chag Sameach. And תודה רבה for joining us today. להתראות.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach.
Shabbat Shalom.
Be well. Bye.
Bye bye.